I'm Jonathan Nichols Pethick. I'm the director of the Pulliam Center. Oh, that is, wow, that is really nice of you.
Yeah.
That is really, that was unexpected. And I will be paying you later. And I'm very pleased to be up on the stage, and I hope I have nothing to say after this introduction, because I just want to hear these people talk. But I want to do some brief introductions here. Right to my left is David Dietz, class of 2011, former special assistant in the Office of Public Engagement and Intergovernmental Affairs. Right?
Well done.
These are long titles.
Oh, yeah, they're very long.
They're government titles. So, and he's currently a senior specialist in the Office of Social Responsibility at the NBA, right? National Basketball Association. That NBA.
That one.
Amazing.
Sports
Yes.
All right.
Sports.
Next to David is Bess Evans, class of 2007, my former advisee. Excuse me. Former Senior Associate Director and Senior Policy Advisor at the Whitehouse Office of Public Engagement and the Whitehouse Domestic Policy Council. Whew.
It's long.
She's a huge deal.
she's a big deal. She is currently resting.
That's
Yes,
right on the
yes. And then to Bess's left is Duncan Wolfe, class of 2011, former photographer and videographer and digital director at the White House, and is currently director 1 at Optimus. Does that mean?
Yeah.
1 at Optimus. I like that.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah.
We like that.
Yeah.
Great. So this is a real pleasure for me to have these three back, and I just want to start by asking you to maybe just start telling us a little bit about your journey from here to the White House. So however you want to take that question, go.
I'm going to start.
Duncan's going to start.
So, when I was
I feel like David does this story better, but I'm just
No,
kidding.
no,
Go,
no, this is-
Duncan.
I'm just going to start it because
Go.
it begins
Go.
when I was a senior in high
You got
school.
this.
I was a senior in high school visiting DePauw, and I was connected with superstar senior Bess Evans to talk about DePauw, and I sat in on her radio show. And so we were familiar, and then she came back to do something very similar to this. She sat right here when David and I were freshman media fellows, and Bess asked anybody in the audience if they wanted for winter term to go be her interns in what we thought would be Iowa for the whole month, because she had been working as a field organizer for Senator Barack Obama. And I think me, David, and our other friend Michael Ratliff, who's not here, we both sort of turned to each other and were like, man. And I knew Bess a little bit, so it was like, oh, I know her. Like, let's do it. And then I don't know.
Yeah, so what Duncan's failing to mention here is that when Bess came back, it was like, you know, our first semester on campus. We're like media fellows trying to get speaker credit, like don't know what to expect from any of the people that they drag back for these sorts of things. And Bess shows up here in like a red Barack Obama t-shirt and just like gives this like 35-minute like emotional like series of gut punches to like the crowd that are like, look, what's happening in Iowa is special. Like Senator Obama is like the voice of a generation. Like we are building a movement out there. We believe in these things, and we believe that the power of all of us together is much greater than the power of any one of us to stop the other. And like the rest of the group is like kind of a mixed bag. Some people are like on their phone, and like Duncan and I are just kind of like eating up every single word of this. And so as he mentioned, like kind of at the end, it was a throwaway sort of like, oh, and if anybody wants to winter term in Iowa, let me know. And we like charged right up, and like little did we know that Senator Obama would win Iowa. We would like make lifelong friendships with Bess, all end up working together back at the White House within the decade, which sounds like a long time.
A long time.
It was a long time ago.
We're super old.
Yeah.
Let's just get that out of the way.
You're super old, and I'm super older than the two of you.
And so this event is kind of a perfect.
I'm not going to mention anything about that.
So this event is kind of a perfect full circle for us because we like literally were just like two garden variety DePauw bros sitting in the audience until Bess like inspired us to join the movement, and we've been a part of it ever since.
Well, and it's so impactful for me to be back because I feel like DePauw was that for me.
I came here because of the Media Fellows program. Was between here and a lot of other universities that maybe had better known, more prestigious journalism-only tracked programs. But I came for Media Fellows, and I really thought that I wanted to be a reporter and be in journalism. And I got here, and after a semester, I realized that what I was really passionate about was the intersection of politics and media and storytelling and how important that is. Because of that, and because the Media Fellows program sort of allows, I know a lot of folks in here are Media Fellows, but there's a flexibility. A lot of my work with Media Fellows revolved around politics and media, and it was the classes that we had in Watson Forum for the Media Fellows program, and it's classes like Professor Newman's that made me really start to develop sort of a worldview around how those two things interact and intersect, and how I could make a career out of that and not just a hobby out of that. And so I was all set to go to Southern Louisiana to teach high school English for Teach for America, and I had made phone calls with the Putnam County Democratic Party, for various congressional candidates, for state representatives, I think for Nancy Michael at one point. I mean, just for literally anybody with a D after their name. Was very involved in college Democrats. Was a precinct chairperson elected myself in the Spencer 4th District. Very proud of that. And 2 weeks before graduation, because of Dr. Bomer, who used to be the head of the Media Fellows program, he knew someone that knew someone that knew someone that maybe could get someone my resume, who then maybe could get another person in Iowa my resume to go work on the Barack Obama campaign. And I was incredibly passionate about sort of making a life out of politics and the way that interacts with people's lives. And 2 weeks before college graduation, I got a phone call. I'll never forget where I was sitting in the French House, which is now United DePauw, but at the time it was a living unit that me and 5 of my best gal pals lived in. And it was the field director in Iowa, and he asked me 3 questions. First was, how soon can you be here? And I was 2 weeks away from graduation, so I said, like, 2 weeks and 1 day. I'd like to walk at graduation.
Who was it? Mitch?
Yeah, Mitch.
Yeah.
Do you have a car? Which was code, and if anybody ever asks you if you have a car, it means you're going to be driving a lot. So just know that you're going to be in the most rural parts of Iowa, if somebody ever asks you that on a campaign. And do you want to come to Iowa and help us change the world? And it was in that moment that I think my whole life trajectory was changed. And I arrived at that because of DePauw, because of how I was raised here. And so it feels so right to come back and have sort of other members of what feel like a family sort of talk about that experience, because I think that is something that is so unique to this campus, and to the way that professors interact with students, the way that this campus sort of creates almost like a petri dish for you to have to angst and grow and change and learn, and sometimes that's hard and that's yucky, and it feels like you're fighting the biggest power, and then you remember you're in Greencastle and you're like, what's happening? There's a huge world out there, but this feels so important, and I think that's a good thing. And it at least taught me a lot about who I was, and yielded a lot of who I am now.
Yeah. So I can see why you guys were like, yes, I'm going to go work with her, right? So,
Right.
I mean, this happened to me on the first time I met Bess, by the way, so which was a winter term class that she single-handedly sort of turned around for me, because I wasn't going to learn anybody's names in 3 weeks. And she knew that, and she was like, we're going to do this thing, it's going to help you learn names. And I was like, no, we're not. And she said, yes, we are.
Super into the name
tags.
And we did it, and the class bonded, and we had a relatively good time in the saddest winter term ever, which was a documentary film class, in which we watched the saddest documentaries ever.
We just spent the whole darkest month of the year in Greencastle crying at PCCM over current events and war.
The times of Harvey Milk, and it's like, oh, okay, good.
Yeah. That's great.
This is really happy.
Yep.
But I wanted to, so you were sitting here listening to Bess.
Yeah.
What did drive that passion for you guys? What made you go, yes, I want to talk to her some more?
I don't know that I have a real answer for that.
Okay.
I think it was mostly sort of a growing interest in politics.
Yeah.
My parents are here. Hi, Mom and Dad.
Hey, Judy and Joe.
Judy and Joe.
Was raised in a family that paid attention to the news.
Yeah.
Sort of, I wouldn't say politically active, although my father's also a precinct committeeman from Indianapolis. But I think that at that time, President Bush was in office. I had read one of then Senator Obama's books, so I was generally a fan of his. But it was Bess, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like, it was the right place, the right time, and the right story
Okay.
that made me want to hitch my wagon to where she was going.
And the opportunity was there. Like it was like there was no reason to not
Sure.
do it. You know,
Right.
I don't remember what my other options would have been other than take a class on campus. It's now no longer pass-fail, I hear.
Yeah.
But
It can be. It
can be.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. And David and I met on like the first day of like Media Fellows like orientation, and we were like, oh, we're both into politics, and like
Yeah.
that was. But we were 18, you know. We
Yeah.
didn't really know what that meant.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but also I think you're also not giving enough credit to the fact that both of you are like incredibly brave, incredibly passionate about the world and the community around you. And as 18-year-old men, it's like a pretty tall order to be like, yeah, let's get in. Was it your mom or your mom's station?
My mom's
the van.
Yeah, the van.
And drive to Iowa to go not just work with, but like trust this random stranger that I've met 3 times to, I think we had one conference call to like,
Here in this building.
yes,
Remember?
yes. And
Yeah. And you called in for like 2 seconds. Here's the address. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And we had to like tell them what we were going to do for credit for winter term. We were like, look, like we're going to be on the campaign and we'll let you know after we get back.
But it was a really brave choice, and I think that it's a testament to like you just kind of. I think we all have a gut, but also just a sort of it's your gut is like a meld of your heart and your mind a little bit, and you kind of know when something is right.
Right.
And I think that I could have not called into that conference
Right.
line and been like, this is weird. I don't know these people. They lived in the
Sure.
back of my office.
But I think that
And-
moment came for me once we were in Iowa. I think that we sort of drove out there not knowing quite what to expect. I think that's safe to say. And then, do you want to do like a little?
thermometer had just gotten to 0 degrees when we rolled up
Yeah.
into Iowa
Oh, yeah.
on January 1st,
Freezing.
Yeah.
2009.
Yeah.
And we had, and when we say we were in Iowa, like, is there anybody in here from Iowa? Awesome.
Woo!
Excellent. We're not talking like Des Moines or Iowa City. We were in a town called Spencer, Iowa, that is in the far northwest corner. It's 100 miles. 100 miles away, the largest city is Sioux City, probably another city you couldn't identify on a map. It was 3.5 hours from Des Moines. So it's like Greencastle if it were 3.5 hours from Indianapolis.
It looks like Fargo.
Yeah.
It did,
Yeah.
like when we were there.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
Which is
Just as cold.
Fargo's not that.
No, it's not that far away.
And we had supporters, but it's a small town, and folks, the economy was tanking, and folks didn't have a lot of space in their homes, and so instead of being able to find supporter housing for these guys, they lived in the back of our office and showered at the 24-hour fitness across the street.
This is like every winter term ever.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
and we made it work.
So we the first day, we drive this van. My mom's still more scared that we're gonna not be able to manage our own safety and security and finances and everything else. And so we pile in this van. We drive 10 hours to Iowa, and we get there at it's 11 o'clock at night, pretty late.
Yeah.
And we're expecting it to be Bess is one not answering our calls, obviously. And so we expect to get to this address she gave us, the field office. So we expect it to be her and a staff member closing up shop. Bess is literally there, standing on a chair, directing lines of volunteers who are printing things and stapling things.
man, I
and
forgot about
we
that.
stood in this field office for 10 minutes before she even knew we were there. And she was she's in the middle of this frenzy of organization and frenzy of giving marching orders and laughing and telling kids what to do. And then finally she's just are you the guys from DePauw? And we're yeah, and she's great, grab a stapler. And so we literally, leave our stuff in the doorway and grab a stapler, and then, an hour later or so, she kind of talks us through what we're going to be doing.
Some context here, though. The Iowa caucuses had kept getting
Yeah.
moved up because other states were we want to be important. We
Yeah.
might want to be first, and Iowa it ended up being on the
January 3rd.
3rd.
Right.
So we were going to be in Iowa the whole month with Bess, and then we show up and it's like game day is in 2 days.
And from the beginning, it was clear that something special was happening in Iowa. I thought anyway.
Yeah.
Like we walked in not really knowing, and Bess is like has a office full of like 100 people at midnight on a Tuesday, on New Year's Day, mind you. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much we want to spend, but Iowa was definitely the experience that I think kept me with the political bug and involved and invested in the long term.
Yeah, and I think that everyone has their Iowa, right? It's like this special moment. For me, I always say that Iowa felt like holding lightning. It was like you knew you had something incredibly electric and so special, and you like didn't want to let it go, and you knew that it wouldn't come again. And it was just incredible to see, I think for the first time, not in a generation, but in a couple of generations, people really feel like they were being heard, and like what they thought and what they felt mattered, and that there was someone that represented that. And in those early days, when I got to Iowa in May of 2007, when we had 5% name recognition across the country, and it was literally just like block by block, door by door, talking to people about Barack Obama that allowed us to sort of get where we got and win the Iowa caucus in this way that that didn't just empower the people that were supporters of Barack Obama. I think my favorite memory from Iowa is on caucus night, but not because we won. It's because when we won, the supporters from all of the other campaigns, so like the John Edwards precinct captains, the Hillary Clinton precinct captains, they all came to our office to celebrate with us. And it was unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life. My parents had come in to knock doors, and they had basically bought every, beer, bottle of wine, and in the county, and like set up shop in our office of this sort of celebratory night. And the John Edwards County chair comes in and shakes my hand and says we fought a good fight, and there's something about that, and it was different than I think I expected it to be, that it brought people together more than it sort of pushed folks apart, and that was what was so special.
And I think that's unique to Iowa. Like I don't know how many, we're obviously all political minded people now especially, but if you have a percentage of you that is interested in politics, want to learn what it's like, want to figure out how to get involved, find a way to get to Iowa when there's an open primary caucus season. Pick your favorite candidate and spend a month, a weekend, as long as you can, knocking doors and doing it the old-fashioned grassroots way. Because let me tell you, I've knocked doors in Indiana, I've knocked doors in Pennsylvania, Virginia, Nevada, don't go there, and Iowa. And Iowa is so different than everywhere else because they have this tradition of the caucuses, right? They're first in the nation every year. Every candidate that wants to run for president comes to small towns like Spencer and smaller than Greencastle and will come sit in your living room and tell you about their 18-point healthcare plan, and it's all taken very, very seriously, and there's this sort of earnestness about the process. And you don't vote in Iowa, you caucus. So you have to go to like a town meeting and vote with your body. And so
you literally stand up for your favorite candidate. It's incredible.
And so knocking on, so we show up, Bess is running this, amazing operation long into the nighttime hours. And we spend the next 3 days like knocking on doors in sub-zero temperatures. And that sounds miserable, but let me tell you, when it's cold in Iowa and you're knocking doors, like it's not like knocking doors anywhere else, because the person will answer the door. You say, "Hi, I'm here. You're reading from your little card. Like, I'm here from the Barack Obama campaign. I'd like to know if you know where your caucus location is and if you figured out who you're going to support." And they're like, "Well, let's talk about that. Come on in," and like invite you in. Sometimes hot chocolate. I'm thinking about supporting the senator, but I got to be honest. Hillary's healthcare plan covers more people, and I know that where we live, a lot of people have lost their health insurance when they lost their job, and frankly, the idea of a universal healthcare plan sounds pretty good to me. And what does Senator Obama think about that? And it's like, we're, as we said, already in over our heads, and knocking on these doors, and you just have people interacting with the issues and the questions in a way that like is really like inspiring. And trust me, not every door is like that, and not every conversation results in a persuaded voter, and not, it's not always this puppies and rainbows kind of experience. But I do think Iowa has this sort of civic virtue that they really, really, really take seriously, and it makes that experience the kind of experience that can teach you a lot about politics in a hurry. Whereas most other places, yeah, they have, you know, you can knock on doors, but you might get a few more slammed in your face.
Yeah.
I was going to ask about what the work was, but I think I got it. It's knocking on doors.
Phone calls, doors,
calls.
walk
It's not rocket
packets.
science.
So how much training did you have to get to be able to answer the questions like, what does Barack Obama think about that?
Not a ton.
Not a ton.
You know, I think that we had a sort of meeting earlier where we talked about sort of community organizing and activism and advocacy and what that looks like, and basically came out of it with more questions than answers. Sure. But I think that the key to sort of getting interested in politics is just reading and finding information. And I spent a lot of my time reading all of then Senator Obama's sort of white papers on the various things on healthcare and the environment and the Iraq War. And you know, we spent some time sort of talking about messaging and how to weave in certain aspects of then Senator Obama's sort of character and values into answers about, you know, questions that may have been tougher ones or easier ones. And but I think it's just having that hunger to just sort of learn more about the issues that it's what allowed me to have those conversations. But for a volunteer, you just send them out and ask them to rely on their story and the reason that they were passionate and the reason that they were out in the freezing cold. And so even if someone said, you know, I don't know about this aspect of the healthcare plan or this aspect of their environmental plan, even if David or Duncan or I didn't know the answer to their question.
We didn't.
The answer could always be, well, I actually don't know, I can get back to you with that, but let me tell you why I'm here. Let me tell you why I am using my time and my parka as a testament to how passionate I am about this thing that I care about, which is this electing this person to be president. And I think that is something that, even if it's outside of politics, I think is incredibly important, is sort of crafting that narrative for yourself about why you care about something so much.
Okay, so you win Iowa, and the train leaves the station, and we all know where the train goes, right? It goes right to the presidency. So you get to the White House. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what then you all ended up doing at the White House, and talk a little bit about what your roles were, and you can start anywhere you want.
You're the trailblazer.
You were there first.
Yeah, so I did 7 different states in the primary, and then I ran the east half of North Carolina for the general election. All field work, so organizing volunteers, door knocking, phone banking, the sort of where the rubber meets the road of voter contact, and came up to DC, worked on the inaugural committee, and planned the parade route, which sounds like a really fun job. And it was really cold, and it was not a really fun job.
No, I always say don't ever work on inauguration unless you're the one being inaugurated.
Planned the maneuvering of 3 additional million people into Washington, D.C. But on the eve of the inauguration, got a call to interview for a job actually in the East Wing of the White House, doing all of the tours and events in the White House Visitor's Office. So everything from the lighting of the National Christmas tree to the White House Easter egg roll. So really fun stuff. Had an incredibly exciting experience, sort of also getting to liaise with the local DC community. How do we make the White House the most open and accessible that it's ever been? How do we get more people through on tours that have ever been through? How do we make sure that the diversity at the White House Easter egg roll represents the diversity of this country? And so really tried to sort of revolutionize the way that people interacted with what we called the front door of the White House, right? The sort of social side of it. And loved that work, and felt like it was so powerful to be able to like create a memory for someone that they held for their whole life, right? You come to the White House maybe once for a tour when you're 8 years old or when you're 80 years old, and that memory is yours forever, and to be able to curate that for someone was just such a powerful thing. And so I was there for about 1.5 years, and but just candidly, I think had come into politics and to Washington to sort of do more policy work. And so left and went to the Department of Justice's Office on Violence Against Women, and was there doing sort of long-term planning, message development, was there as we were crafting and pushing through the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act, some sort of communications and speech writing work, so a little bit of a collage of tasks, and then was recruited to go back to the White House to work in the Office of Science and Technology Policy. Mind you, I did not take a science class when I was here at DePauw, and I had not taken a math class since my junior year of high school. But the Office of Science and Technology Policy needed someone that could do their public engagement work and some of their comms work to sort of take these incredibly complicated things that they were working on and make them understandable to people. And craft them into, as sort of STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and math education were becoming sort of this new hip and trendy movement as folks were getting excited about the marshmallow cannon that the president launched, and we launched a White House science fair, and as sort of the tech sector was emerging, they needed someone to sort of do that public engagement work. So I was there for about almost 3 years. And on October 1st of 2013, healthcare.gov launched, and then nothing happened. And we had what I would call an incredibly rocky start to what was, and still is, the president's sort of signature law. And so even if you didn't work on healthcare on October 1st of 2013, that day you started working on healthcare. And so I took on the portfolio of actually interacting with all of the higher education institutions, specifically community colleges, to try to figure out how, once we had the website back up and running, how we could get people to engage and sign up for health insurance. And how we could sort of craft the whole message around the ACA, buy back some folks' trust that we had lost because of that rocky rollout. And so was doing that sort of part-time in addition to what I was doing in the Office of Science and Technology Policy, and then had the opportunity to come to the Office of Public Engagement full-time and do all of our healthcare engagement. I've actually never told the story, I don't know if you guys know this, but my first week in that job, one of my very best friends from DePauw committed suicide. And I was so heartbroken, I left and went to her funeral, and I went back to work, and I said, I know I'm here to do healthcare, but can my portfolio also be the whole health portfolio, so that we can talk about behavioral health, so that we can do some suicide prevention work? And they said, yeah, sure, nobody's doing that. That sounds great. And so I ended up doing the whole health portfolio that included all of the ACA work, but also included all of our work on behavioral health, all of our work on suicide prevention, expanded as it became an emerging problem, all of our work on substance use disorder, the opioid epidemic and addiction. And then because we categorize it as a health issue and not as a criminal justice issue, all of our work on gun violence prevention. And so heavy stuff, but incredibly impactful work where you could literally feel the impact you were making on people's lives every day. By getting them health care, by calling a parent that had lost a child in a school shooting, and it just being able to sort of, it was the closest thing to Iowa that I had since Iowa. It was like community organizing, but from the most powerful place in the world, but without sort of but understanding that we were the most powerful place in the world, but we were working for the people. And that was just so fulfilling to me. So that's the long answer to a very short question. Sorry.
Yeah, and certainly I did not work in the administration for 8 years. And after Iowa and Nevada, which is where we all went together after Iowa, that's sort of where all of our paths kind of sort of separate, and we each sort of started going down our own road. After the 2008 campaign, I thought I was going to study political science here, but ultimately discovered art history and art as this thing that I was very interested in, visual culture. And I was still working in campaigns for my Media Fellows internship. I worked on a Senate campaign in Missouri, Robin Carnahan. We lost terribly to now Senator Roy Blunt. But on that campaign was when the candidate was looking for somebody to take photos, and I had always sort of I don't know, been just visually attuned, and I was like, well, shit, I'll do it. My dad is a designer, so he always like had nice cameras and stuff, and so I realized then that like that was my ticket to like being present in the room.
Yeah.
And so you know, even though we lost, it was sort of a powerful just experience for me. And then after I graduated in 2011. And David sort of blazed the trail and was an intern at the Whitehouse about a year before I was, but he'll get to that. So when I graduated a week later, I went to go be an intern for Pete Souza, who is President Obama's chief photographer, and working in the photo office. And so that was sort of this nice way for me to sort of like, it seemed like this perfect, I just was fortunate to find this perfect combination of like this political world I had been working in, but also sort of this newer visual image making thing that I was really interested in as well. And certainly Cindy Odell's over there. She helped me figure that out. And so that was like just a really solid place to be. But at the same time, like, you know, you're a White House intern coming from Indiana, and like you're there with like a bunch of other Ivy League like brown nosers, and I was just like, you know what, I'm not, and they're all angling for jobs and stuff, and you're like, all right, this was like very cool, but like I had I wanted to go try to figure out my own thing, and I sort of dabbled and I freelanced, and I was like, this isn't like a clean, cool story like Bess's, but I started freelancing a little bit, just doing small, teeny things, and then I ended up working on the 2012 campaign. I worked in North Carolina as the deputy digital director, so that was just for the state, thinking about how we were messaging, taking the national message, applying it, and trying to talk to people in North Carolina. A lot of what my job was to, you know, make video content, and so if the First Lady or the Vice President or somebody would come, or some like celebrity, we'd like figure out like what can we make, what video could we make with these people to get people to register to vote, or to get you know, get people up to the polls. And I did that, and then after that, I was like, man, this was cool, but finally politics, like this is it for me. This was a fun ride. And then I basically started this other path of figuring out how to be a commercial director. I like did some photography stuff, but I was like, I want to direct TV commercials. I don't know why, but so I started doing that, and then I got, just because of being in the sort of ecosystem, and because I had this sort of higher end production experience, you know, somebody left in the Office of Digital Strategy on the president's sort of small video team, and this was last August, like almost a year and a half ago-ish. I just got a Facebook message from like this guy that I sort of knew from when I was an intern. He's like, hey man, like there's this job, like would you be interested? And at first I was like, nah, I was done with politics. And then after like consulting all of my loved ones, it was like, oh right, you're insane, you have to do this. And so then I went on.
Duncan comes into the building for an interview. I'm like, hi.
And mind you, just like a month before I got that Facebook message randomly, like I went to David's going away party at the White House, and I was like, I sort of did my goodbye to DC, like, man, this was cool, I get to come visit my friends at the White House occasionally, like, isn't this, you know, wasn't that special? And then like 5 months later I was working. So I then went on to work in the Office of Digital Strategy in the White House, which was originally the Office of New Media, as we used to call it. And basically my office was in charge of things like whitehouse.gov, but also the White House Instagram. I had launched the White House Snapchat, the First Lady Snapchat, all of the videos you would see on YouTube, and on Facebook especially. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen the video. The most popular video we ever made was
the Cuba video?
No, it was the one with the 107-year-old lady dancing with the president, and you know, and like that was an accident, and I didn't even shoot that. That was my two colleagues that shot that, but that was like the kind of, so people like sort of know the content we made, and luckily, when you're the White House, you just sort of have this organic following. We had 8 million followers on our Facebook page, so you could, we
Almost
could
like
make,
mine. Yeah.
I could make some, I could make some video, and it's a pretty crazy environment, and you're shooting, you're editing, and you get it out, and like maybe one other person looks at it, it's like, yeah, it looks fine, and then it's like you wake up the next morning and it's like, oh, this has 57 million views. But in like this, that all sounds cool, like cool internet videos, like fun dancing, but the whole point, and like that video is an anomaly, but it was Black History Month. You had a woman that was born before she was able to vote. She is in the White House, which is being held by Barack Hussein Obama and Michelle Obama, and it was this like really powerful moment that spoke way more about how far we'd come and was really, really special. And to have people just have this easily consumable thing to see and to maybe not even realize that that's what it was speaking to, was like, that's sort of what our office was always trying to do. Were we always succeeding? No. So anyway, I went to go work in this office. About 20 people, the people that run all of the social stuff, the emails, digital strategy, and then I worked on a little 4-person team that did video when we sort of traveled with the different principals and documented the presidency for history, for the archives, and then also for this more immediate release content stuff. So there's 98% of the things we shot hasn't been released, and certainly a lot of it's not interesting, but some of it really is, and it's going to be cool when it all comes out in sort of a more raw format. So yeah, that was sort of where, and then I worked until the very end. So my last day was January 11th, like a week before. So Bess was there till pretty much the very end, but. Yeah, so it was a really nice way to end my sort of experience and to tie it all together. So
This is your third end in politics, so we'll see where you end up.
Yeah. I think third time's a charm.
I think I'm done. I don't know.
My path, they covered various pieces, so hopefully I can breeze through it pretty quick. But this experience in Iowa, our freshman year winter term, really changed sort of the way I saw the world and what I thought I wanted to do. And so I came back and really engaged on campus, organizing around the primary that was here and around the general election against John McCain, because Indiana mattered in the primary for the first time ever, and lest you forget, Indiana voted for Barack Obama in 2008. And so I spent a lot of time on campus with my peers, going door to door at Greek houses, speaking at every student life meeting, with Jinsey Bingham, making phone calls on the square, with Kelsey Kaufman knocking doors in the county, which is not quite Iowa, but some similarities. And had this tremendous experience once again, and I think on election night, in Putnam County, the courthouse, it's still super old school. They like read out the precinct totals for each precinct, and we won Greencastle 70-30. We lost Putnam County 60-40, but it was a really special time, and I sort of had a nice end to that whole first chapter that left me wanting more and wanting to sort of broaden my experience and figure out what this whole political moment in this movement was building towards. And after the election, that moved to Washington, D.C., and the real work of governing began. And so luckily enough for me, I was able to get an internship on Capitol Hill the very next summer after my sophomore year, interning in my congressman's office, Brad Ellsworth, who used to represent Greencastle. However, and I'm going to tell this story, my mom's already covering her head. About a month before I started that internship, I had my tonsils taken out. Side note, if you haven't done it yet, please don't. I had a ton of complications. We go all the way out to Washington, D.C. I show up for my first day of work, and I'm like bleeding from my throat in a pretty serious way that caused me to literally be rushed to emergency surgery. I don't ever set foot in the Ellsworth office until the last 2 weeks of the internship. My mom has to stay in Washington, D.C. and take care of me. I'm inpatient for 3 days in the hospital. Very bad situation. And there's a reason I'm telling this story, by the way. So that's my sophomore year. I don't really have the political experience that I thought I would. But my junior year is coming up, and I'm a media fellow, so I know I'm going to have a chance to go off campus, and I basically phone bank Bess Evans until I can figure out how I can get some kind of Whitehouse internship. Right there, the new administration is in their like second round of interns. They're just sort of figuring out how things are going to work, what offices are going to do what. As we were seeing now, the transitions can be a little slow and tough to figure out, and so Bess helps me get in touch with this part of the White House called the Social Office. Which is kind of a misnomer. It's actually like the White House Office of Public Events. So they do all the bill signings, press statements, parties, receptions, anything involving the President or First Lady that takes place on the White House grounds. We plan all the logistics. So you talk to the butlers, you talk to Secret Service, you talk to the visitor's office who runs tours, you talk to the policy shop who's doing the rollout, and make sort of a minute-by-minute plan of who's going to be where at what time doing what. So it was a great time to be there because, as Bess mentioned earlier, the President and First Lady were really committed to opening the White House back up to the people and doing all these cool creative events to bring underserved communities into the White House, to bring in all these artists and do performance series and really sort of bring to life the building and the campus itself as a reflection of their values and as a reflection of the country. And so I have this amazing experience in Washington, D.C. And while I'm having that, my spring semester of my junior year, my parents back home in Indianapolis are going to war with my insurance company to try to get covered the emergency surgery that I had on my tonsils. This like raspy voice I have was pre the tonsils, so I was born this way. And it just like boggles my mind. We were going rounds and rounds and rounds. They're saying everything was elective. They're saying that the surgery that we had in Washington D.C. was a cosmetic surgery, and none of it's covered. And I don't remember what the actual dollar total was, but pretty significant. And so, I mean, I like have this moment where I'm at the White House. I'm like, Jesus, like how crazy is this? I'm like a upper middle class white dude. My father is an insurance lawyer. Say hi, Joe. And if they're trying to screw me, dear God, what are they doing to people that don't have half the power that I have? And so this happens to be when the healthcare fight is happening in Congress. It was quite a politically active time. I'll skip over some of those details, but long story short, because I'm in this events office at the time, the day that healthcare gets passed, and then the week after when the president signs the bill, I'm literally standing in the room when the Affordable Care Act is signed into law. And not an hour after that law, I mean, I'm like on cloud nine, this is the big, huge achievement that the president has. An hour after the bill is signed, my mom calls me and it's like, you're not gonna believe this, but I was driving down to meet with the insurance company one final time, and they just dropped everything and are gonna pay the claim in full. On that day. And so I had this, again, I know, I think things happen for a reason. I think there was a really good reason why I was sitting in the audience when Bess Evans was giving her speech, and a really good reason why, we met Jinsey Bingham and knocked on every door we could to turn Indiana blue and everything in between. And that day was just one of those moments where I was like, you know what? I'm in the right place for the right reason, and this work could not be more important. And so that happened. I had a great experience as an intern. I was lucky enough to be asked to go on the road doing a job called Presidential Advance, which is similar to the job I was doing planning events in the White House, but on the road. So whenever the President or First Lady travel anywhere, they send staff to that place like the week ahead of time to like show up at the school and meet the principal and say, where's the press going to be? Where's the riser going to be? How are we going to build out the site? Where's the podium going to be? And make these sort of cool event plans 1 week ahead of time so that when the President and First Lady show up, they have everything that they need to have a smooth logistical experience, but also get to interact with Americans in the most sort of meaningful ways possible. And so it's actually a great job. Presidential Advance is something I highly recommend. And it took me to India and South Africa and Kansas City, Missouri, and every other place in between. And so I was doing that my whole last 2 years at DePauw. And when the president ran for re-election, I'm obviously still chugging the Kool-Aid and ready to sign up on the re-election campaign. And I worked in Chicago at the headquarters, first as the internship coordinator. Having been a multiple-time intern, I feel like I understand the mind of the intern pretty well. And so it was a great experience. We packed 900 people into an office space designed for 400 in Chicago. And ended up getting to help out on some really cool projects, making a lot of lifelong mentors and friends. And when the president won re-election, was asked to come join Bess's office, the Office of Public Engagement in the White House, which is where I had the opportunity. She mentioned that she was sort of focused on healthcare outreach as her group and focus. And the way that office is structured is each sort of major constituency group or policy cluster has a person that's responsible for interacting with the leaders and the organizations that represent that group or are focused on that issue. So African Americans have a liaison that interacts with the African American civil rights leaders, with NAACP, with a lot of the major civil rights organizations. Business community has a person that interacts day to day with business interest groups, et cetera. And sort of the function is to be, they're advocates within the building, so that when they need something from the president, they know who to pick up and call. If it's healthcare, they're calling Bess Evans. And then we have a point of contact when the president's doing something that affects them, and we want them to know what we're doing and why. And so my slice of that pie was the sports industry. And so I ended up being the guy who worked closely with athletes, leagues, and teams on their advocacy to support the president's agenda. So she mentioned the rocky rollout of healthcare.gov, and we spent a lot of time trying to get LeBron James to help us with healthcare, and every athlete in between who would take our call to do things to help show that these issues aren't just about politics and they're not just about who's winning in Congress that day, but to turn on some light bulbs similar to the way mine was turned on. These issues can affect you in ways that you don't fully appreciate, and I think that the president, being an organizer at heart and frankly a big sports fan, realized the power of sport to bring people together in sort of a non-political way, and to take advantage of the regular championship visits and tours and different things we were doing with the industry. So I loved it. I was there for about 2.5 years. I did not stay till the end. Bess and I overlapped. We sat 2 offices away the whole time we worked there, which was a really cool DePauw stronghold. I missed Duncan by a month and a half, he mentioned, which was sad. It was the experience of a lifetime, and absolutely, I still think the most important thing we'll ever do.
It's interesting to me to listen. I was hearing, on one hand we have sort of policy construction and policy management, and then we also have sort of messaging and events, getting people around those things, and then obviously recording it, archiving it, making creating this sort of visual tableau about what this presidency is and what these policies are. This is an interesting sort of trajectory through your careers that sort of connect all these things. So it's fascinating to me, and just the degree to which a simple event has to, or a simple policy has to have this massive sort of machine behind it, and that you threw a part of that. I want to ask you one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to these people who have way better questions than I do. But if there's one thing, if you could each say one thing that you would say, when I was a student, I wish I, and then finish that. When I was at DePauw, I wish I.
Should we start at that end?
Sip that water, buddy. Get in there. I can go, actually.
Yeah, go.
I have mine.
Same batting order.
Top of the lineup. I mean, a sports reference. Yes. I wish that I had focused more on my academics. I know that's shocking.
Says the Walker Cup winner.
No, I'm serious. I think college is, these 4 years are such an incredible time to build social bonds and bond with your gal pals in your living unit, and get really involved in student activities, and be social on Friday and Saturday nights, and do all of those things, right? And that's incredibly important and cultivates a section of your soul that is really important. But I miss the ability to just focus on learning now that I am in my adult life. There is not this sort of carved out time to just explore different issues and just sort of take a class because you're kind of interested in that, and maybe you end up not being interested in that, and maybe that class changes your life, like Nancy Davis's Protest, Activism, and Change changed mine. And you don't have that any other time than when you are here, unless you go to grad. You don't have that any other time except when you are in an institution of higher learning. And I wish that I had understood that when I was here. We talked the other night about how, like, we wish that we could go to college from like 25 to 29 because like you'd love it a little bit more.
That's why we're back right now.
I did it. It's great.
Yeah, it's going to grad school. So good. But I would just say that you know, you leave here with lifelong friends. Everybody tells you that, and that's true. But don't just look around you, look up as well. Some of my lifelong friends are professors as well. And it is rare to go to a institution of higher learning and have a professor invite you over for dinner when you're a student. And that happens here, but it is even rarer 10 years later, after I graduated last night, to go to Professor Newman and Professor Upton's house for dinner last night and spend 4 hours like just talking about the world and talking about our lives. And I graduated 10 years ago, and they're my friends, and they're I don't call them my mentors, I call them, they're a part of my board of directors of my life. And that is incredibly powerful, and it is very unique to DePauw, and I wish that I had like loved and nurtured that a little bit more.
I think in some ways, and this is actually something Newman said the other night, I think in some ways my experience here was almost like the archetypal DePauw story. Like, I met Bess Evans by chance because of a program that recruited me to come here, and then she became a lifelong mentor that helped me understand what I wanted to do, helped me get connected in ways that let me do it, and then helped me grow on my own many, many years after we stopped working together. And I think that DePauw does a lot of things insanely well. And because of the size, because of how you get to know your peers and your professors, I'm with Bess that's the best thing, and that's still the thing that I miss. And those relationships get better with time, and I think too few students take real advantage of that and put themselves out there to try to become friends with the professors that they really relate to. But those who do unanimously are glad that they did. So I'm on board with that. I think the thing that I would have done differently, honestly, I think you know, towards the end of my time here, I think I was trying to do a little too much, frankly, and wasn't quite as present in some of those relationships as I would have liked to have been. And I don't know, I think that because everybody's so busy and it's the work hard, play hard sort of constant you know, overachiever mindset, at least that we had, and that I think a lot of DePauw kids carry with them. Sometimes you just, there's a blur, and you don't stop to appreciate you know, the people around you in the right ways. And I think I've tried to do that more since we left, and it's tough, obviously. But that's the thing I would say is I wish I had made even more time for it.
Yeah, I think that I had an amazing time at DePauw, and I think all of us were very lucky to find those stars aligned for us, and that we had something in us that told us to go for it. But I think I wish I had been more involved socially and just different things, and engaged in conversations with people that were not like me. And I think it's really easy to be insulated in your own community at DePauw.
Yeah.
And there's like structural reasons for that, for sure. But now that I come back and I can sort of look around and, like, you know, go walk by some fraternity house or something, it's like, oh man, like I can see that this is like, there are these pockets, and I wished so deeply, and it's taken me, I mean, you know, the phrase, you know, being woke is such a thing now, and it's like, man, when I was in college, I don't really think I was there, and I think every day I'm doing the best I can to be as woke as I can.
You sound super cool when you say it.
Yep.
But
You're doing good.
no, but you know,
Yeah, I hear you.
just being aware of who I am and where I'm coming from, and making an active effort to engage with those that are not,
Right.
to be really sort of vague about it, because I think it would have benefited me much earlier, and it took me a while. But you know, after being at the White House, and every day you are talking and working with a crazy diverse amount of people, and that come from crazy backgrounds, and you're
talking to real Americans that have real problems, and other staffers that come from a totally different world, and that has truly created a new universe that I live in now that I don't think I was when I was at DePauw fully, and I wished I had found ways to do that. And
One thing we all said earlier that we didn't do was take an Andrea Sununu writing class.
Yes, we all wish we
which
had
is a fatal
done that.
mistake.
I wish I had.
All wish we
Still
had done that.
pains me to this day.
Me too.
Well,
So don't be afraid. Step up.
Yes.
Show up. She'll change your life.
Do it.
Yes.
I have a story about that myself, but which is that, and I'm going to embarrass Andrea, is that I actually just asked a student once, I gave back papers, and I said, I don't know if my comments help you. I hope they do. I try hard, but I'm not sure they're helpful. And she says, oh, no, you're very good. You're very good. You're not life-changing good like Andrea Sununu. So, anyway, I'd like to open it up for questions from people in the audience who have, okay, so I'll let Marilyn decide who gets the mic.
Excuse me. When I look at you guys, then I also sort of think about...
Will you introduce yourself before you...
I'm David Kobe. I'm a senior. So if you guys got any jobs... McCarter mentioned I'm the current EIC of the DePauw with my friend Michael Jennings. And then when I think of like you guys and also sort of the Obama speechwriting staff, there seemed to be a lot of opportunity for young people within the Obama administration. Was that sort of the culture of the White House, or could you just sort of speak to that? Because it just seemed like everyone had a lot of opportunity, I think, that wasn't the same in administrations past.
are you referencing Pod Save America?
Sort of, I guess so.
Just asking. Okay.
I would say absolutely yes. But it wasn't like they were out to try to find young people specifically. They just believed in a meritocracy that said whoever is the best person for this job will get this job. There was sort of a famous mantra on the campaign in 2008 that was no drama Obama, which sort of got blown out of proportion a little bit, but meant to say that look, we're all here for the same reason, and this is bigger than any single one of us. And so you really had to live that every day, and I think opportunity then flowed a little more naturally because there wasn't the constant sort of angling and elbowing that other campaigns had to deal with about what job they were trying to get in the end. And I remember thinking at the end of 08, and Bess, you could probably speak to this more, people who were before the election happened thinking about oh, hey, what job are you gonna try to get in Washington? Were not fired on the spot, but really, really stigmatized because no one was there for that reason. It was about the work in front of you, and I think they did a great job. I mean, it's really tough to staff a government, but I think they did a really good job finding people and growing the Obama family, embracing the folks that were on the Clinton side, and trying to figure out how governance works and who actually would succeed at what level. And there ended up being a lot of opportunity for young people, and especially we're proof, but as interns. That's how a lot of folks get their foot in the door, and you work hard to impress the person you're working for, and the sky's the limit.
I would also just say that some of that is by design too. At the White House, we're painting a very we're painting a very rosy picture because it was a life-changing experience. It was the most incredible experience I have had to date, and maybe will ever have. But it was 19-hour days. Every day, and
Sundays too.
And you would get home at night with your laptop and open it back up when you got home, right? You had that half hour off when you're taking the bus home. And it's really hard to do that when the stamina that you have to be able to do that for a prolonged period of time, I think is conducive to younger people. It's very hard to do it with a family, although President Obama tried to be as family friendly as he could. We were the first White House that had laptops so that parents could go home and pick kids up from do pick up, do drop off, get their kids, go home, have dinner, and then sign back on. Checking your email was the thing that you did last at night and first in the morning. And last at night was 1 a.m. and first in the morning was 6 a.m. And so I think that part of that was just the hours. But I do think that there was an intentional sort of who is the best for this job and who will bring the energy and the passion to deliver on the promise that we've made to people that right makes might, and if we work as hard as we possibly can for people, that working on the right thing, that it will impact their lives.
Nobody works at the White House for the paycheck. Duncan's a good example. I think it's somebody who was doing well on the outside and came back for a specific set of non-financial reasons. But yeah, I mean, the other thing I will say about the fact that there's a lot of young people is that it also creates this really cool, fun culture of teamwork, and you really get to know the people that you're working at. It honestly felt some ways like college, where everyone knew everyone. It's on a campus, and you're working past midnight a lot of the time, and you guys.
There's weird traditions, and there's weird,
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it was a really cool opportunity that way. Next.
Hi, I'm Leah. I'm also a senior.
Hi, Leah.
So I know, Beth, you said you're resting.
I am resting.
Which you should be. But I was just curious what you guys are all up to now that you've left the White House and there's a new administration.
Sure. So my last day was January 17th. And those of us that stayed till the end were very lucky that we were also paid out for all of our vacation. And so I have a little bit of a sort of buffer here to be able to just like take some time. No surprise that for me, my ideal scenario from the election did not occur. And so my desired outcome was not the outcome. And so I think that I have needed the time to sort of not just reflect on what has happened, but also sort of claw the cobwebs a little bit away to think about what is next. I know whatever I do will be somehow focused on community impact, social impact, making sure that it is community-based work that impacts people's lives, but sort of what that looks like, I'm sort of not sure. I also think, and I was saying this to someone earlier, that at least for the progressive movement, I think that the first couple of weeks here has just felt a little bit like a game of whack-a-mole. And hasn't necessarily been as strategic and thoughtful and managed as we would maybe like it to be. And so I think it's just going to take a little time to recalibrate to the new reality and figure out that there's power in opposition and turn that power into a plan and turn that plan into a successful vision. So I'll be a part of that in some way, but for now, I'm hanging with my husband and doing a lot of cooking.
I'm also sort of trying to figure out how best to use what I can do. And there's a bunch of cool projects happening. There's a Swing Left, and there's
Run for Something.
Run for Something. And there was this wonderful organization, this group of like ad agencies called the Creative Artists Alliance that sort of pulled together like how can we do cool, good stuff for good causes. And so I'm speaking with them and trying to figure out what I can do. And this is more on a side capacity. Professionally, I'm directing TV commercials. I just moved to Los Angeles, where it's like 80 degrees and sunny every day. I recommend it to everyone. And so I'm also kind of just taking it slow. I think it's going to be a while before I can really process all of the things that that happened and that I experienced. So, but I have a lot less time to unpack than this one does. So, yeah.
Yeah. So I, as I mentioned, left the administration a full year and a half before it ended, and so I've been at the NBA League office in New York for a year and a half now. And I'm a part of their social responsibility group. So we do a lot of community programming, both domestically and overseas, trying to use the game of basketball to help create stronger, safer communities, to help create healthier, smarter young folks. I've really, really enjoyed that experience. I think the NBA is a place that has a really admirable set of values that we try to walk the walk, and a lot of our players are outspoken on their beliefs and encouraged by the league to be so. And I've gotten a chance to, I think, sort of see the other side of this a little bit. Not that anyone saw, I think, the election outcome coming, but I sort of have gotten to see sort of the power that non-governmental and non-political actors can have when they focus on communities and when they focus on people and creating outcomes using whatever means that they have. And so for us, that's basketball, and it's been a really powerful tool. But I think there is plenty of room for your creativity and innovation, and I'm not worried about either of these two at all.
I think Bruce was next here. Right here, Marilyn. Bruce.
Hi, I'm Bruce Steinberg, Political Science Department here.
Bruce.
I have a political sciencey type question.
All right.
So, you said that Iowa was life-changing moment, blah, 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 blah.
I think we had 4 blahs, but yeah.
If counterfactual question, Barack Obama doesn't win Iowa. You know, the party's at somewhere else. Your parents take the booze
gin
somewhere
else,
else.
yeah.
To the Edwards campaign. And, you know, not a bad guy. Do you folks kind of put your tail between your legs and do something else and you're not sitting here today? Or do you maybe transform your energy and so forth to become an Edwards person or a Joe Biden person or a Chris Dodd person or a Hillary Clinton person back in 08?
We would have done whatever she wanted to.
Bess, you're on the spot.
And I went to Iowa for Barack Obama. I didn't go to Iowa for politics, right? And so I think if he hadn't have won, I've never been asked that question, and I haven't given a lot of thought to it, but I think that so much of a lot of people ask me, I'll have a coffee with someone and they'll say, I'm thinking about going to a campaign, or I'm thinking about getting into politics. And I always say to them that the candidate matters. The person you are working for matters. And so if I had been in a scenario where my candidate hadn't won, and as a result, right, the subtext of that is that my vision for what I thought the world and America should be was not what people chose, I don't think I would have maybe hitched my wagon somewhere else. I don't, nothing against people that supported John Edwards. He would have not been a candidate that I would have gone to work for.
What about Joe Biden, though?
Joe Biden I would have gone and worked for. Love Joe Biden. Love Joe Biden.
Who doesn't love Joe Biden?
So I think the candidate would have mattered to me and what the outcome had been and sort of what that meant. I think that I was very involved with college Democrats. I identify as a Democrat, with a big D. But I also think that my political views are a little bit fluid, and I can sort of see the other side of arguments, right? Like there were times, especially as a person that worked in health, where Governor Kasich in Ohio made some excellent points about Medicaid expansion, that it's important for me as a big D Democrat to identify that there is common ground there. And so I don't think that I would have just done it to keep doing it. I think that I would have probably gone on to do something else, but I don't know what that would have been.
I also have no idea. Literally none. I don't know where I'd be.
But I think that that's the beauty of it, right? Is that probably what would have happened is that we would have made different choices that would have yielded a different storyline that hopefully, because we were continuing to follow our passion, would have been maybe as interesting or as inspiring. Professor Upton said to me last night that to make the brave choice. And I think that when you make brave choices in your life, it doesn't sort of matter what they are, as long as they are something that sort of fuels you, right? And so I think that we probably would have all had dynamic experiences outside of this. We just got to be at the tip of the spear of politics in America for 10 years, and which was, to your point, actually, lucky. It was lucky.
Yeah.
Hi, Cindy Odell, Art Department. It's wonderful to see you guys come back, and so amazing. So I didn't get to work. I only worked with Duncan, and we didn't work a ton. But I just want to say this for the students in the room. So I have kudos for Duncan, and I have a question. So the first thing I want to say is regarding when you were here as a student. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know, I haven't asked you if I can say all this stuff. But anyway, so.
Yes.
Say
this is good.
Yes,
This is good.
Duncan was in
Say it.
photo
That's
one.
cameras,
Photo one, right? And this is black and white photography in the darkroom. It's a craft. It requires technical dedication. It requires spending time and learning. And we had a depth of field assignment, which some of you may know. Depth of field relates to the range of focus in a photograph, right? And Duncan comes in with this exquisite depth of field photograph. Blew my mind. It's one of the best I've ever seen, okay? It takes dedication. You have to be willing to work hard and be present, right? Next thing I know, Duncan's like, well, I found this grant. I want to go to China. I said, well, how are you going to pay for it? Well, I found this grant. You need to write me a thing. Okay. What am I writing for?
That's so Duncan. You need to write me a thing.
Right. But the thing I loved about it was that, you know, you talked, you wish if you were to come back to DePauw that, I think you said something about, you know, being more present here. But what I loved about your China project is you said, I'm going to go to China and observe tourists observing China. Right, because I've done that before, right? Fun. And so I think your desire to be self-reflective, right? And I want to know about all 19 countries, like all these great stories, but that you dove into those things while you were here. That this stuff doesn't come out of a vacuum. That you didn't just have, I mean, you obviously had these great people to connect to, but while you were here, when I saw you working, you were present and you were dedicated and you were trying and you were innovative and you're coming up with things. Now the grant that Duncan found is on the website and everyone's like, well, how do we get money for that? I'm like, you got to do what Duncan did.
The house grant.
The house grant.
Yeah.
Yeah, nobody knew about it till you told us about it.
There's so much money around, like, you can take it. Like, write a thing and they'll give you thousands of dollars. And I get to, like, I went to China by myself. I don't speak Chinese. I just, like, well, I sort of do now, but, like, there's money. Go take it. Go travel. Go, like,
And the other thing is you had an iPhone. I was like, what is that? And you weren't rude to me about it, and you didn't act arrogant. You know, you're like, no, it's this really cool thing. You have to get one. You know, that was a little while ago. But so I just want to say to the students in the room that this doesn't just happen. You guys didn't just end up in DC, right? And the other thing I have is, this is completely just a personal question, not as a political science trained human. So I've never met Barack Obama, but my guess is that I would just love to hang out and chat with him. That he just seems like a genuinely, really amazing person. So what I'm wondering, and this will probably show my bias, but how is he, do you have any guesses, or did you see anything that you can share with us today about he is dealing emotionally with where the administration is going right now?
Now? How he's doing now?
Yeah.
So I have not seen him since. I have seen her since. But I think that first and foremost, I think it's important to note that everything that you sort of read in mainstream media and sort of all of the interpretations of who Barack Obama is and the sort of laughing photos and all, like, it's fact, not fiction.
Right. And the First Lady.
It is nonfiction. They are wonderful people that care deeply about the people that have given time and care and love and sacrificed time from their families to serve this country and serve them as people that had a vision for this country. They are wonderful people. Vice President Biden, Dr. Biden, who not enough people know who Dr. Biden is. She is a professor at a community college in Northern Virginia. She continued teaching all 8 years, English writing, and she is incredible. But all four of them.
Her students didn't know that she was the vice president's wife.
They just called her Dr. B, and they literally did not know for a significant portion of the administration, which is just incredible. So all four of them, I think that probably I speak for all of us in saying there are 100 interactions that we each had that it just warms your heart, but also makes you feel like there's so much about being a good president that requires being a good person, and we were really lucky to have that and experience that firsthand. I think that if I can deduce from stories and interactions with people that are in the very small personal office and interviews that he has given, and sort of if I can cobble together the facts, my deductive reasoning skills would say that he feels good that he left it all on the field. He feels good that we worked hard till the very last moment that we possibly could. We were doing healthcare events 10 days before the end of the administration. And I think that they both probably feel good about that. I think they're both tired, and I think that they have earned the right to be citizens now. I think that there's a little bit of a rumbling within progressive communities that's like, where's President Obama? Where's First Lady Michelle Obama? Why are they not guiding us with their wisdom? And it's because elections have consequences, and they're not the President and First Lady anymore. And they're going to take their role as citizen incredibly seriously, but their role is the same as us now. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that and sort of give them the space to be able to cultivate that identity on their own. And I think they're focused on writing their books and trying to sort of get all that has happened into writing as quickly as it can, so that it doesn't leave from memory. So that would be the best guess that I can give.
And I go back a lot when people ask a similar question to the day after the election. He gave a statement in the Rose Garden. A lot of staff were out there. You've seen the photos, crying staff. It was like a very weird day. But everybody's just devastated. But the one person who's like, certainly, I'm not going to say he was not devastated, but he was the most positive person speaking, and that speech and just some other remarks to staff, it's like, his name is Barack Hussein Obama. He was president for not only 4 years, but he was president for 8 years. That's not supposed to happen, not here, and it did. And so sometimes, like, he's like, speaking to the young staff, like, you guys haven't seen anything. Like, this is history that's happening. You have to keep the long view in mind, and like sometimes we take a step back, and then we can take 2 steps forward. And so, like, I do appreciate his optimism, like, as that guy is like the perpetual optimist, and like, isn't that like just something special to have, especially in comparison to now. So I go back to that a lot when I think about that question, and I think it's just going to be time that's going to have to pass before we really know.
I think he also has, I'm sorry to chime in again, but I think he has so much respect for the office of the presidency in a way that so few people have. And I think that he respects the office of the presidency enough to know that unless personally engaged, which on a few times in the last 7 weeks he has been, that he's not the president anymore, and his role is not to serve in that role. And he was given that opportunity by President George W. Bush, who was given that opportunity by President Clinton. And there's something to be said for knowing that elections matter and have consequences, and now we have a new president, and I think that even if he fundamentally disagrees with aspects of policy that are happening, that he knows his role and wants to be respectful of the office in a really different way. And I think also knows that him engaging doesn't actually help much. In fact, it might even divide folks more. And as he said in that speech the next day, we have this scrimmage, but at the end of the day, we're all on the same team, and this is an intramural scrimmage, right? We're all in this together at the end of the day, and we have to find ways to come together, and he's very passionate about that.
We have time for probably one or two more.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Boyd. I'm also a senior, much like every other student who's asked a question. And I wanted to know what you guys thought about midterm elections, because the one thing that the Democrats really didn't do in the 8 years was campaign as well during those. How do we become energized as a base for the elections that don't have the highest office in the land on the ballot?
Sure.
And then I have a follow-up question after.
Great. I can go first, but I think we all have opinion. We've talked at length about this among ourselves. I think the midterms, again, I'm sure that there are many political affiliations and opinions in this room. Coming from a person that identifies as a Democrat, I think that the midterms are going to be tough for us. It is going to be a tough fight if you look at the map, especially in the Senate. It would, even in the best of circumstances, it would be a tough year, and we are not in the best of circumstances. And so I think that it is going to require a level of engagement for the public that we have not seen, as you said, in a midterm election in a long time, but I also think that it's incredibly important to not just focus on your congressperson or your senator, but to also think through what's happening in local elections, what's happening in your state house and your state senate and governor's mansions, and I think that the progressive movement doesn't do that well. We really show up and knock doors every 4 years, but we don't do it as often as we should for more local elections that actually impact our lives more. And so I think that will be a challenge, right? I was so uplifted, right? So uplifted the day after inauguration to see the Women's March and all of the incredible marches across the country and across the world, across the globe. But that's the beginning, not the end. It's not even the beginning, right? Because there are many that have been in the resistance for years and years and years, and it diminishes their work to say it's the beginning. Like, that was a moment, but there are so many more of that story continues. And we, as a progressive movement, we need to make sure that it isn't just showing up for the big stuff or showing up for the things that my lived experience that impacts my lived experience. It's showing up for the things that match my values. So I can't just show up for the Women's March. I have to also show up at the next Black Lives Matter movement protest. I need to show up at the Science March. I need to show up for
school board meetings.
Yeah, at school board meetings. I need to show up to clean up the park. I need to show up. I need to show up with my body and with my time often. And that isn't just elections, but that includes elections.
I don't disagree with any of that. I also think it's a big messaging thing. I think Democrats, I don't have an answer, but I think Democrats have a lot of, I think we have to figure out a new strategy for how to message this stuff, because certainly, like, straight facts don't always work, and we have to, and I mean, look, like, you got coal miners in West Virginia that voted for Trump that they're going to lose their health insurance, and it's like figuring out how to make sure these people understand that that's what happened and that they voted against their own interests before, and pegging Trump to these congressional races in some way or another. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. I think the way that the transition has happened, I think, has surprised a lot of people on both sides of the aisle. I think it's an amazing opportunity for folks in our generation to re-engage. I know the last cycle wasn't our brightest moment, numbers-wise, but we all know how much energy there is on campus. We all know in different parts of these conversations, there's a real desire to create the sort of society and preserve the kind of system that we believe in. And believe me, the system is not perfect, and I realize it turns some people off. You know, the details of a nominating contest or the nuance of how local politics can work in some places, and redistricting, and there are a lot of reasons to throw your hands up and say, you know, all of this is too much. But it's up to us, and we know what our values are when it comes to the climate, when it comes to the kinds of society and values that we believe in, and I think it's a really good opportunity for us to remind the country that this generation has a voice, and when we harness it together, that we're a force to be reckoned with.
And then, sorry, I had one more.
Oh yeah, so go ahead.
And also someone who identifies as a big D Democrat, who excites you guys now? There's a lot of discussion on the fact that there aren't as many young emerging leaders. There's not an ex-Barack Obama lined up.
Pick one, different one.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll rep my home state of Missouri. I think Jason Kander's pretty cool. I think you guys all maybe know him from that ad where he was like blindfold and building the machine gun. Any veteran, like special forces veteran that's also a Democrat, is like, in my book, just like such a perfect like thing. But Jason Kander also is just brilliant and can talk to you like a normal dude, and that's so incredibly needed now. Like I don't know. I think we're done with the era of super polished soundbite politicians, because it's just not. People don't care, and they can see through the bullshit. I don't know. It's I don't know. Jason Kander, that's my guy.
Who you got, Bess?
I'm not ready yet.
All right, I have two. I'm going to break my own rule.
I knew you would.
One is the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti, is a guy who's insanely smart, steeped in these issues, and represents a community that represents America, which is so important to me. And he's a guy who oddly people haven't heard much from, especially in the not West Coast part of the country. The other one is a local voice, Mayor Pete Buttigieg from South Bend. Who doesn't love Mayor Pete? Come on. He's great. He revolutionized the way governance works in South Bend. He brought data. He also has a military background, was in the Navy. Brought data to city governance and basically created CompStat for like all the way their utilities work. It was really like sort of brought to life the movement up there. He's the first openly gay mayor in the state. And he threw his hat in the ring to be chair of the Democratic Party, and I think surprised a lot of people with having some really great arguments about how we should be thinking about the exact question around the midterms and where this movement's going. Plus, he's just a really nice, approachable man, and so I'm a fan of those two guys.
I think Kamala Harris is great, new senator from California. I think we need new women in
less
politics.
white dudes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think, but my answer actually is like no one that I know yet. And I think that is a testament to the fact that we need to follow some of President Obama's urging that if you don't like what's happening, grab a clipboard, get some signatures, and run yourself. And I think that there are certainly some future elected officials in this room. I think I look around at my friends and my neighbors that are young, that are the most progressive generation ever, that are more connected than any generation ever before. And I think there is real power there. We just have to adjust the structure of politics to welcome those people and welcome this generation that I think can have an incredible impact if we don't make them wait in line for 50 years to become Senate and House leadership, to run for president, to run for mayor in their small town. I think that we need to get away from the so-and-so has earned this spot, they've done their time. It is a problem that leadership in Congress skews older on the age scale, and that's not to say that years of service don't matter, or wisdom doesn't matter, or having a historical reference of where we've come from to be able to view where we're going doesn't matter. But our generation has a different worldview, and I think that our politics should match that, and that's really hard right now. So my answer would be someone I don't know yet. I can't wait to meet them.
All right. Well, we've got to get you folks off to somewhere else at 6, I think. So we're going to have to cut this short. I want to thank David, Bess, and Duncan for joining us.
Thanks,
for a
JNP.
great talk. Thank you guys so much. Yes. And thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate this.